the qualities of leadership, resilience, and purpose is really, if I could boil those down into like, you asked for what's one word, what's one quality, those are the qualities that I look for in founders. And obviously, if someone's raised their right hand and they said, I'm going to defend this country, and they've been through the military, they've been through adversity, they did something bigger than themselves, they push, because I was in the Marines, I was on active duty for 5 years, right? And I learned so much about myself through that process.
All right, guys, welcome to another episode of The Report. Today, I got someone special, someone I've been waiting to get on this podcast. This man's talked to 10,000 business founders and entrepreneurs over the last 10 years. He is the general partner of the Veteran Fund. I got my man, Mike Sherbakov. Mike, welcome to the show.
Rich, thanks so much for having me here.
Yeah, man. Appreciate you coming on. I think we first met through Lisa's song at a Fast Lane Drive event out in Coronado Island a year and a half ago, actually.
That's right.
Yeah, man. And then you were speaking at Garrett and Yesie's event here a couple months ago. That's how we reconnected. And now you're back on the show, man. So excited to have you.
Yeah, happy to be here, man.
Yeah,
thanks for having me.
So a funny story, right before we started recording, you were telling me how you're getting your license and getting certified to paraglide, and you're doing one of your first solos, and you go down on Black's Beach, and you got a whole nudist colony there asking you about paragliding.
Yeah. So it's funny because I lived in San Diego 16 years. Whenever people come visit, the first place I always take them is the glider port, the Torrey Pines glider port. So if anyone has not been to San Diego, or if you live in San Diego and you haven't been there, you have to go. I think it's the most beautiful views in all of San Diego. And I remember I've always just sat there and watched the paragliders and thought, this is incredible. You know, one day, I'm going to do it. And then earlier this year, I just decided, like, not one day, at day one. So I just stood up, hadn't done it before, ever, walked in the office and said, let me sign up to get my certification. And yesterday was my second solo flight. And it's really funny because no one tells you this, but you kind of take off from the top, 350 feet above the beach. And for your first 10 flights as a solo, you have to land on the beach. Eventually, you end up getting good enough and you land back where you took off. But you take off from the top, you kind of, float down and you land on the beach. And right below Torrey Pines Glider Port is Black's Beach, which is the only nude beach in San Diego. And so, yesterday I had a nice welcoming committee that seemed to have a lot of questions for me about how paragliding works as I'm packing up my chute. So
that is too funny.
Eye contact.
That is too funny. So I was surprised, though. You mentioned that you don't have to go up with an instructor at all. You can literally your first flight is without an instructor. You've never gone up with an instructor.
Yeah, it's actually the same thing with skydiving.
That's shocking to me.
Like when I was getting my skydiving certification, day 2 of the skydiving certification, maybe even day 1, to be honest, after you do ground school in skydiving, they take you up and you're wearing a suit that has these 2 handles on it, but you are by yourself. You jump out of the plane and you have 2 instructors holding on to you. When you pull your chute, you're navigating down by yourself. You're just on radio comms. So exact same thing with paragliding. I had done 2 days of ground school and we did handling of the glider. And then on end of day 3, my instructor says, hey, you've got a good sense of this. Are you ready to go? I was nervous, honestly. I was nervous. And let's do it. And that feeling of running off the cliff and looking down below you and just soaring, there's nothing like it. Like, I know some people are afraid of heights. They think it's scary. It's actually incredibly safe. Recommend it for everyone. At least try it out. It's an incredible feeling.
That example you said of jumping out the plane with 2 instructors kind of like guiding you, skydiving, that seems a lot more reasonable than jumping off the cliff without any instructors next to you. What because when you fly, I have my private pilot's license since 2009, and I used to fly when I was working up at LA Center as a controller. There was a flying club, and so we all paid in this club, and I flew at Cherokee. And so I flew from 2009 to 2015. But when you get your private pilot's license, you typically do anywhere from 40 to 50 hours before you get certified to fully go up. On your own. This is checked out, but a lot of those hours are with an instructor,
right?
But with the paragliding, there's no formal written rules or anything like that with the FAA.
No, they have they don't obviously have the same restrictions that one does in having a private plane. So and it's the way that this site is rated, it's called a P3 site, and so you're under instructor supervision and you are on radio comms. I was thinking though, if I go off and the radio cuts out, because he's guiding you. He's like, lean right, pull, brake left, brake right. And, I just have the video of my landing. I'll have to show it to you. It was like this super smooth landing. And I just like throw my fists in the air and I'm so stoked. But yeah, all these things are going through my mind of like, what about all the things that could go wrong? The reality is like, you're under supervision. It's in a safe area. And they've done this for so long. They felt comfortable enough with me saying, hey, he's got good enough common sense, good pilot handling skills.
Is the biggest risk running into another paraglider? Because sometimes I go out there on a windy day. I was out there I'll hike Torrey Pines all the time, so we always see them up there. But I feel like on a windy day, there's more of them.
Yeah.
And sometimes there's dozens of them up there, and sometimes they get a little close.
Yeah, those are definitely guys that know what they're doing, that all have their like P3 rating, which means that they can kind of go out by themselves. For me, because I'm not actually doing the soaring, which is like staying above the cliff, I'm just on this descent path, right? And I did a couple turns and landed on the beach.
Okay.
They also are very smart because when you're a beginner like me, they have this 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. block for the beginners. And then the afternoon block, when the wind actually does get much better, conditions are always better in the afternoon. They don't let beginners fly then. So when I'm flying, yesterday there were maybe 2 other people in the air, and then they actually like check the beach, make sure that it's, the tide's out, there's a wide enough landing zone for me, there aren't a lot of people. So if they saw a bunch of people in the air and if they saw a lot of people on the beach, they probably would not have let me do my solo flight. But yesterday the conditions were perfect.
Damn, that's cool, man.
Yeah,
that's exciting
awesome
stuff. You'll
That's
have to
very
let me
cool.
know once you get all certified and all done with that.
Yeah.
That's good stuff. Cool, dude. So I think something that's unique about yourself is obviously your general partner with the Veteran Fund. Your co-general partner is actually Lisa Song. Lisa's been a guest on this podcast a couple times now out of Las Vegas, and a friend of mine as well. But talk briefly real quick, and I want to jump into so many things, but just talk briefly, what exactly is the Veteran Fund?
So the Veteran Fund is a next generation venture capital firm, end of the day. And when I say next generation, I mean that venture capital has been done a certain way for a long time. And when my partners, Lisa, who's an absolute rock star.
Love Lisa.
And incredible. And by the way, the other 2 partners, Ryan Micheletti, Justin Nahama, you have to have on at some point because they have incredible backgrounds. I mean, Ryan's personal portfolio of startups is 700 companies. He's a shareholder in 700 companies. And Justin, Marine officer, he was a federal prosecutor for 5 years, helped scale CrossFit from the ground up. He was Deepak's lawyer. I mean, the guy's an absolute legend. So at some point, they'd be great guests. So, but the 4 of us got together, and what's unique about us is we all had what I would consider successful careers up until that point, right? You obviously had Lisa on. I don't have to go through her background, but just like on top of selling a company of sprinkles and being Miss Las Vegas or Miss Nevada and setting a fundraising record for the state of Nevada in her congressional run.
And she's a great driver. We get in these fast lane rallies, and she got that Porsche 911, and she's a great driver.
No,
man.
Lisa continues
leading the pack.
Continues to blow me away. I mean, and I'm sure she told you the story of how she became a general partner with us, first as an LP, then as a GP. Best decision we ever made, and she's become one of my best friends. So I'm so happy, for her and grateful to have her. But the 4 of us got together, and we had these successful careers up until that point. And the way I like to describe it is we said, we don't have to do this, but we have to do this. Does that make sense, Rich? Like, we don't have to because like, hey, life is good without it. But if we don't do it, this is one of those things we would be on our deathbed regretting that we didn't do. And because it's not a traditional venture capital firm. Yes, there's some aspects of it that are traditional. We can talk about the details of that in the sense of like, of course, we're targeting great returns for all of our investors, right? That at the end of the day, we're finding really great companies to invest in. For context, we've looked at 5,000 companies, and right now our portfolio is 20 companies. We'll do 5 more in this fund. We'll do another 25 in a $100 million fund too. But that's kind of where we are. So yes, providing great returns. But more than that, we're investing in technologies and in people that matter. So our entire tagline at the Veteran Fund is advancing America through venture capital. And I'm sure you found this in your world too, like in the investors you talk to and in your personal life. At some point, you realize like it's not just about making money. Like that's awesome. But if you're going to be putting time, energy, and capital to work, why not put it towards things that you actually care about? And so, I can get into the thesis of the firm and the fund and like why we decided to invest in veterans and why we invest in the types of technology that we invest in. But at the end of the day, these are things that like really matter to us that are actually driving our country forward. This country that's given me and so many other people like so many incredible opportunities.
Yeah. That's good, man. No, I definitely want to dive into more of the specifics around your fund. But first, I want to get to, I have so many questions around this. You've spoke to over the last 10 years, 10,000 business founders, 10,000 entrepreneurs, and vetting them in terms of what they do, what the future looks like with their business, what the return profiles look like, et cetera, and essentially qualifying opportunities. And I think that is a skill that a lot of people, listening to this want to have. But more importantly, it's like there's skills baked into these entrepreneurs, these business founders that makes them successful, that separates those that are maybe mediocre or middle of the pack, but also those that actually climb the ladder and become something really great. And for some of those folks, really changing the way things are done, changing the world, changing innovation, the Elon Musk of the world, the Mark Cubans, the Jeff Bezos, some of those folks. But curious for you, man, like out of all 10,000 business founders, entrepreneurs, what is like that one characteristic that you found apparent with all of them across the board, or was there one?
Is there one characteristic? That's tough to answer. I want to insert a caveat here. So, I mean, I've looked at well over 10,000, I'd say, in the last 10 years, but that's also like we have really good systems. So I want to clarify, it's not me talking to every single founder every single time. Through the Founder Institute, which we'll talk about, we have really great systems in place where we can kind of weed out what's a serious business opportunity and what's not, right? Yeah, qualifying at a high level, and then you eventually boil it down to where, okay, is there a there? And at that point, I would then talk to those founders and get a sense of, is what they're building on, is it interesting? What's their background and all that kind of stuff. But to answer your question, it actually like ties back in with the first question about like, what is the veteran fund? What makes it unique? Our whole thesis at the veteran fund, like true to our name, is we invest in folks that have a prior military background, military veterans. And you would ask, why military veterans? Well, for me, the qualities of leadership, resilience, and purpose is really, if I could boil those down into like, you asked for what's one word, what's one quality, those are the qualities that I look for in founders. And obviously, if someone's raised their right hand and they said, I'm going to defend this country, and they've been through the military, they've been through adversity, they did something bigger than themselves, they push, because I was in the Marines, I was on active duty for 5 years, right? And I learned so much about myself through that process, right? What I thought was my limit here, I remember like the first week of boot camp, it's like, oh, you think this is where you stop? No, there's so much more left. When you think you can't possibly do another push-up, and you have a drill instructor yelling in your face, like another one, or like the entire, platoon of like 86 other folks that you're going through boot camp with are relying on you to do one more. You're going to do another one, and then another one, and another one. And it's at what point do you realize, wait, these are just like self-imposed limitations I have? And then that transcends beyond physical limitations and pushing yourself to now mental. Like these things I thought I could do, wait, I'm actually capable of so much more. So again, now we take that entire framework and we say, those are really good qualities for a founder to have, an entrepreneur to have, because whatever limits you set on yourselves, you have to blast through them. And you have to kind of be delusionally optimistic, right? You have to have a mission in mind, and you have to do whatever it takes to accomplish that mission. And if you could put like one archetype or one type of founder that is going to run through walls to accomplish a mission, I would argue it's the military veteran, right? Like everyone else, like I'm sure other people have those qualities, right? Like you mentioned Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, Mark, those guys did not serve in the military, but they have those qualities. They're so focused, and
competitive
Elon,
too.
And competitive,
Yeah.
like they have that drive.
I feel like a lot of professional athletes become really good entrepreneurs in their post-athlete like careers. I've had a lot of athletes on the show that now are entrepreneurs or real estate investors, and they do a good job of it because they have that competitive drive, but the same drive that a lot of these military folks have as well.
Yeah, exactly. And leadership, resilience, purpose. They have a deep sense of why they're doing what they do. They're obviously great leaders. You have to be a great leader, essentially, to build a team. And the resilience is like the important part, is because like ask any founder, the three you talk about, you can listen to them on all their podcasts. Ask any great founder, have they accomplished what they've accomplished without experiencing adversity? It's like, has it been smooth sailing the entire time? They're like, no, like 0% chance. In fact, a lot of times you ask them, would you do it again knowing how hard it was? And they're like, I don't think so. Like, you know what? It is freaking hard. It's hard. That's why for even the fund specifically, we looked at 5,000 companies. We have 20 companies, 20 out of 5,000. It's really, really hard.
Yeah. I can imagine, man. And I think from the outside looking in, someone that's novice to entrepreneurship, it looks smooth to them and they see the finished product. They see the Elon Musk at the end, but they didn't see all the work, the at-bats, the reps, falling down, getting back up, missing a lot of family outings and all this stuff along the way to finally become that person. But
the whole 10 years, it takes 10 years to create an overnight success, right? No one sees the 10 years of work behind the scenes. They see the win and they're like, oh, that must have been so easy. Oh, okay.
No,
you have not seen the process.
Definitely is not.
Yeah.
So question for you on this notion, do you feel like being fit is a prerequisite for getting rich or becoming a successful entrepreneur, businessman, businesswoman?
Yeah, really interesting question. Like I like the spicy, it's kind of a controversial one. I don't think it's a prerequisite. I think it is an indicator. So any founder that I talk to, and we can again dive into the specifics of this, every investor looks at three things. Like if you really want to boil it down, they look at team, product, market whenever they're making an investment decision. So is the team someone that I feel confident in? Is the product unique? Does it have defensibility, a moat? And then market, is this a big enough market? You could also say product velocity, like how fast are they building and iterating and rapid prototyping, all that stuff. But if we just focus on team, what kinds of qualities do I look for in a team? Or if it's in the early days, the founder, co-founder, whoever it is. When I look at someone and they're fit, that tells me a few things. That tells me that they prioritize their health. It tells me that they have the discipline to either, wake up early or stay up later, or at least put into their schedule. It's, I love the quote that says, show me your schedule and I'll show you your values. Because everyone likes talking about it, talking about health, but I think these are all indicators of what someone prioritizes. And so to me, it's not the end all be all. It's not a prerequisite, but it certainly tells me that someone has the discipline, and I think they just operate better. I think folks that are healthy, that have a mindfulness practice, that eat well, we talk about whether it's not drinking, but is just mindful and intentional about the way they live. That tells me a lot about how they will operate their business as well. And that's an important factor. I'll just make a note. If I am meeting with a founder and they're like, oh, look, I got to go take a call. And I hear them just berating someone, if they're terrible to their partner, if they're terrible to their parents, if they're just
being a good human being.
Being a good human being.
It's how they talk to servers when you go out to eat, whether it's lunch, just grabbing coffee, but how they talk to people is for me, that's number one with everything. Whether I'm bringing a new friend into my circle, partnering with someone on a deal, it's number one. Are they a good human being? Because if they're not, that's a hard no for me.
Well, and the other important factor is, when we make an investment, whether I'm making an angel investment or we make an investment through the firm, we're signing up for a 10-year relationship with this person. And so we actually think about this all the time. Is this someone that we want at the dinner table with us for the next 10 years?
We've actually and all our investors are amazing people. We love our investor community. So shout out to the investors. But we've actually returned money to a couple investors in the past because I'm just hey, it's not going to be a fit. Boom. We'll just send you a refund.
Same.
Yeah.
There's, I'm obviously not going to name them. There's a large family office that offered to write a very sizable check to the tune of $5 million to the veteran fund that we turned down because the vibes were so off. And first time I was I feel like something's off. I remember talking to Ryan, Justin, Lisa. Second time, something feels off. And then ultimately we just decided. And that was at a time where we needed it, right? We needed to get that traction and show we could do it. But this is that purpose. You have to like the people you do business with. I'm grateful to call Ryan, Justin, Lisa my best friends, but yeah, it's sometimes you turn money away.
Yeah, and that's part of the game. I mean, not everyone's going to be aligned. Just as the same as dating, right? You're not going to marry every girl or every guy that you date. Same thing with business. You're not going to take all money. Not all money is going to be good money. But back to the fitness thing, I think there's a lot of areas within fitness that do translate over to becoming a good entrepreneur. And it's like you had mentioned a couple of those things. It's dedication, being able to commit to a plan regardless of how you're feeling emotionally. You might be tired, but it's okay, I committed to doing this, so I'm going to get my workout in. And then obviously being able to like go put in the reps, put in the at bats, delay gratification, because getting fit is not an overnight thing, right? You go to the gym, you might crush the gym for 2 weeks, you're not going to see any results, right? But if you stay committed, eat well, a month later, 2 months later, 6 months down the road, that's when you start to see the results. And a lot of business, real estate investing, entrepreneurship, it's all delayed gratification. The feedback loop is relatively long. There's a bunch of small wins and learning lessons along the way, but it's not going to happen overnight. And for a lot of these folks that we just mentioned at the top of the show, folks like Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, Grant Cardone was just out here a couple weeks ago. Like he's gonna be 67 this year. The dude's been in the game for a long time, and so if you think about getting fit, it's like it's the long game, delayed gratification. You're putting in the work today for a greater yield and a greater pleasure tomorrow. And I think it plants the seed for becoming successful as an entrepreneur, is you getting in the gym, getting fit.
Yeah, and I never like to be prescriptive. Like I always,
What do you mean when you say that?
When I mean, I don't think there's any one formula to success. That's why even when you were saying like, is there one quality among founders? Like maybe some general qualities. Like are all great founders fit? No. Or do all great founders not drink? No. But I know what works well for me. And again, having enough data points, I'm now talking to well over 10,000. Like I think I can kind of triangulate generally what makes, qualities that can help you become successful. And again, whether it's like drinking, we were talking before the show, a year and a month ago, I had a drink, and I was actually with my business partners, and it was like, great evening, came up with all these cool ideas and everything. And I just remember waking up the next day, did not feel 100%. And I just said, I'm done. I was never a big drinker, never had a problem with it. Fortunately, I don't have that kind of personality, but I just realized like if my life is all about optimizing and make things better and waking up and feeling great and like performing at the highest level, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, being the best I can in business and all that, this thing is actually bringing me down, right? If I'm waking up and I'm not feeling 100%, why would I intentionally put that in my body? And so when I say prescriptive, I mean, for me, I like not drinking. I feel great not drinking. For me, I love working out. It feels great to me to get good sleep. But for someone else, maybe like, they're in a season of life where they're just head down and grinding. And so I don't ever want to make someone like feel wrong that they're so focused on one thing and maybe not prioritizing health. I just think of all the data points I've seen, health is a big part of it. Health's very important. Time with family, time with people you love, that kind of stuff is really important. And unfortunately, some people get to the end of their life and realize it, right? I was listening to a podcast yesterday with Sahil Bloom, actually, and he made an interesting point where he asked a bunch of people, like, would you today trade places with Warren Buffett? Let me ask you, Rich, would you?
No, I wouldn't.
Yeah, no one would. The dude has $150 billion, $150 billion, and no one would trade places with him.
I want the runway.
He's 95 years old. Who knows how much life he has? Obviously, he's a life well lived.
And I'll tell you right now, Warren would give up all that money. I don't know him personally, but I guarantee he would give up all that money and go back to zero to be my age.
That's it. And I'm getting goosebumps thinking about that. So that's an important lesson right there. You have a 95-year-old man that has all the money you could ever imagine in the world. You would never need another dollar. That would give everything to go back to where we are. And here we are, and we're inherently saying, like, our time, what you're saying through that statement is, my time is worth so much more than $150 billion. The time I have. So why would you waste that? You're telling yourself it's worth so much more than $150 billion. So, but does it make sense to be, wasting your nights drinking and waking up feeling miserable and hungover and in relationships you don't care about or working on projects you don't care about? Like, why would you ever waste that time when you know how valuable it is?
I feel you, dude. Time is the only currency that we spend where we don't know how much is left. And I think for me, man, like I was drinking casually, socially, and I got to a point sometime last year to where I was looking around the room and, hanging out, drinking. This is no knock on anyone that drinks. I'm friends with a lot of people that drink. I think it's cool if that's your thing. But I got to a point as an entrepreneur to where I felt like I reached my ceiling in terms of like, this is the highest and the farthest that I'm going to go under these conditions of being around distractions, of drinking and all this sort of stuff, late nights and all that. And I realized that in order for me to get to the next level, and I look ahead, all these people that are, ahead of me, on this, entrepreneurial journey and this ladder, all the folks ahead of me, most of them don't drink. A lot of them are in bed by 9 o'clock at night. And so I just realized like there's levels to the game. In order for me to get to that next level, I got to sacrifice certain things. And one of those things is sacrificing alcohol, And so I haven't decided if I'm going to go forever not drinking, but I'm definitely doing prolonged seasons of it. And 100 days, and then I'll drink for a week, and then 100 days. But I don't know, man. Now I might just do all of 2025 without drinking, dude. It's honestly like I've never felt this great. My fitness is dialed, my business is dialed, and like my energy levels are up. Like my natural testosterone is like up. Like everything is just up. I'm a better like leader. My relationships are better. Like I'm just more clear thinking. Like everything is better. You can't mention, like I can't think of one negative that comes from doing a prolonged season and not drinking, right? And when I look at that, it's like you just said, I always say months is the best way to measure how much time we have left, not years. And so if average life expectancy for a male is 77, I'm 39. I have about 450 months left. And so when I think of the remaining life in those terms, it's like, why would I want to spend, 40, the 450 months that I have remaining operating at 60% capacity because I wanted to go out and have a drink? Like I want to be at 100% and see how far I can go. I want to see what my true potential is. And I know that I'm never going to reach my full potential under those conditions.
Yeah. And again, like I'm finding more and more people are also exploring this idea. And I think, again,
it's the new flex.
It is. And like, I want to clarify, like life is also meant to be enjoyed and have fun, and people metabolize alcohol differently. It's just for me and my body and my mind. Like when I drink, I get tired and I don't sleep well and I feel less than 100%. Someone may drink and they feel awesome and that's their thing. Like go for it, all you. And I'm not in the camp also where I'm saying I'm never going to drink again. Who knows? Like maybe whatever. I don't like, hard and fast rules like that. But I will just say in general, it's probably worth trying out for someone that's like exploring their health goals. Probably worth trying out, hey, what is life like without alcohol? What is life like when you exercise regularly, when you sleep well, when you eat well? And if it makes you feel better and you operate better, do more of that. It's like, it's that simple, right? Without like ever telling anyone what to do.
And really like we're talking about like how to, grow a business or become successful as an entrepreneur. A lot of it is really just doing more of what's working and doing less of what's not working. And if you're operating better and everything's better when you're not drinking, well, it's like, we'll do more of that.
Exactly.
Right? And if things aren't working properly and you're not performing as well when you're drinking, well, it's like, okay, well then do less of that.
That's literally exactly. I gave a talk like 5 or 6 years ago. It was at a conference called Thrive. And I just talked about like divine discomfort without getting too woo-woo about this stuff. But I think like intuitively, we have a good sense of like what's moving us forward in life and what's not. And divine discomfort is like, what I meant is you wake up and if something's off. Like we can kind of intuitively feel like something's off. It's like that email I got from that person, or you know what, I haven't talked to my parents in a while. I should spend a little more time with them, or I know I should be dedicating more time to business or health goals. Like we intuitively feel like where we should be going. And I think it's just listening to more of that. It comes down to the people we spend time with too, right? I'm sure you had a point in your life where you kind of get a feeling of people and you're like, are these people really like helping me grow? Am I becoming a better person by being around them? Or does it just kind of feel toxic and like it's bringing me down? And I also think just like with alcohol and food and sleep and all that stuff, we also have to surround ourselves with people who are like good for our souls, who are like inspire us, right? Conversations, even before the pod, you and I are just like riffing for an hour about like investment stuff. Like I love those kinds of conversations. Let's talk about health. Let's talk about business and life and like up leveling. Like that's the fun journey of life, is like being around people you just get to level up with.
Yeah. And I think the last thing I'll add to that conversation is a lot of the folks that, and if you're listening to this podcast and you got friends that you go out and drink with, if you do a season of not drinking, even if it's just 30 days or 60 days, what you'll quickly notice is like a lot of those folks that you used to have fun with drinking, when you're sobered, like you don't have the same interest to go out and hang out with them. And I think it's a life hack because all of a sudden it frees up a lot of free time. And then it's like, okay, well, how do you reallocate all that free time? And so for me, I didn't realize I would have this much more free time. And it feels good to, put in more work in your business, put in more work in your fitness, put in more work with the relationships that are important to you, and then still have more free time. When time is like the only like limited scarce resource that we have remaining, all of a sudden it frees it up. So I think that's kind of a hack in that regard. I want to switch gears here and talk, when you guys are qualifying these companies and these businesses to work with, and you're talking to these founders, you mentioned there's a couple different levels of qualifying, and at the top level, you might not be having these conversations, but talk about what the qualification process looks like from a macro perspective at the top of the funnel, and then we can get to the bottom of the funnel and see what that looks like and how it changes.
Yeah. So I think there's a couple like important distinctions here, because I don't know how familiar people are with like the early stage startup ecosystem. So I'll kind of define it just so we know what we're talking about here. At the earliest stage, right? And you mentioned, by the way, for context, I split my time 80-20. 80% I'm running the Veteran Fund with the partners I mentioned, 20% running Founder Institute for all of Southern California and the veteran vertical. It's the world's largest startup accelerator. So what does that mean? So, okay, what is an accelerator? It means we help people take ideas and create something with it. So 0 to 1, ideation to MVP, minimum viable product. Someone says, I've got an idea for this app. I've got an idea for this startup. We help them formulate it. And in this 13-week program, which actually a new cohort starts tonight, we'll go for 13 weeks. We have 102 founders enrolled in this program. And we help them get their idea off the ground. Some people come in and they already have an existing business. They're maybe doing a couple $100,000 in annual revenue. We help them like scale it up. So does that make sense? We're kind of validating everything.
Yeah. And so what are like the main points or not main points? What are the main rocks that you guys are maybe providing in these 13 weeks?
Yeah. So every week it's put the blinders on. They have 30 hours of company building work every single week. And it's very focused deliverables based on the program has now 36,000 founders have graduated the program. Let me take it back. 8,000 companies have graduated, 36,000 mentors in the program. So 8,000 is still a lot of companies that have gone through this, right? And it's been over 12 years really dialed in to follow these steps. And it's not your guaranteed success, but these are the steps that will point you in the right direction that you have to follow. So as a very clear example, week 1, which we start again tonight, is vision and mission. Getting very clear on like, what is your personal vision? What is your mission? Like, why are you building the company you're building? The second one we do, so next week, will be customer validation. Like before you ever build anything, before you build a website, before you pour hundreds of thousands of dollars, you have to understand, like, is there actually a demand signal? And this is like founders skip over this. These are basics. Have you talked to potential customers to realize that there's that there's an actual problem that you're addressing in some way? Then we talk about revenue and business models. So like, okay, you've identified there's a solution that needs to exist. Is there a viability for a business? And then you kind of go through eventually to marketing, right? Then you're doing the legal and you're incorporating as a Delaware C Corp if you're going out and raising venture capital. And so like, follow the steps there. But
and you guys will even help with, fundraising for their deals and showing them the proper ways to do that and like the ways to stay out of trouble with the SEC and all that.
Oh yeah. So in this program specifically, I brought in all of my personal investor friends and said, hey, will you be a mentor in this program?
Come and guest speak a little bit.
Yeah. And
That's
so
cool.
Every single week, the mentors do 2 things. 1, they either join us for the weekly session that we do, or 2, they host office hours. And so every single week, these 102 founders that are in the program right now are going to be meeting new mentors, advisors, investors. So by the time they graduate, they've got a roster full. Yeah.
That's so cool.
So real quick, just to answer the question too on like, what do we look for?
Actually, real quick before we circle back, I know we digressed a little bit, but on this institute, I'm curious, how out in the 13 weeks, hey guys, we just got another boutique hotel under contract in my hometown of San Clemente, California, located not too far from the beach. This will make 5 boutique hotels in our real estate investment fund. So if you are looking for passive income and tax benefits, visit summerscapital.com/invest to book a free call with my team. Again, that's summerscapital.com/invest to book a free call with my team. Now back to the show. Because you mentioned you want to identify the problem, make sure that this is actually a real problem and there's going to be demand in the marketplace. How often are these founders in the 13 weeks kind of like making a little bit of a pivot in terms of what their initial plan was going in and then what their product is going to be after the 13 weeks?
100% of the time. 100% of the time. But let me also clarify. we're a pre-seed accelerator. Pre-seed means like very early. Again, 0 to 1, ideation to MVP, minimum viable product. Then the seed accelerators, folks may be familiar with something like Techstars or 500 Startups or Y Combinator. Y Combinator is kind of the famous one that really created this entire accelerator model in Silicon Valley. And Y Combinator companies have gone on and raised like tens of billions of dollars, right? It's like the best of the best. Even they accept one in, I believe, 100,000 companies, 1 in 100, something crazy like that.
And do they partner with these companies? They accept the YCom?
Well, what they do is if you become a YC alumni, you get a stamp of approval. And granted, look, YC's still the best accelerated program out there. Very, very hard to get into. People from all over the world are applying. If you get the stamp of approval, you can pretty much go out and like fundraise very easily. Like you go tell an investor, hey, I'm a YC alumni, they'll just write you a check immediately. That doesn't guarantee your success, but they do a really good job picking companies. It's been diluted over the years. Initially, it was very, very good. Now they've started running more and more cohorts. They've opened up the size of their cohorts. So, but for Founder Institute, you asked how often do they pivot? 100% of the time. The way our program works actually is only about 20% of the founders that start the program finish the program, and that's by design.
Really?
Yeah. So
why is that?
So when they log into their dashboard, they actually have a big button right when they log in, big red button that says drop out, and we want them to validate assumptions and test their hypotheses and figure out very quickly one of two things. One, are they the entrepreneur or the founder to be building this company? Because a lot of people love, you bring up Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, everyone loves the idea of being an entrepreneur, but as an entrepreneur yourself, it is freaking hard. And you realize very quickly through this process, are you cut out to be an entrepreneur or founder? And some people go, this is way too much work. It's way too much uncertainty, way too much risk. I'm done. So they realize they're not the founder. The second thing they realize is, hey, this idea I've had forever, again, this is why we do customer validation, revenue models. They realize there's actually not a business here. There may be like a lifestyle company, you're building something for yourself and it's going to generate, a nice income for you. And that's nice, but there's not a real venture backable business here. And so if they realize one of those two things, I'm not the founder to do this, or this business doesn't make sense, they drop out, but then we invite them, hey, come back next cohort with a new idea. So we graduate 20%.
Now I see this a lot, and this has got to be another one of the reasons for the dropout. Let me know if I'm accurate here, but I see this a lot on the real estate side. Is I feel a lot of people just naturally, we're all human beings. A lot of us tend to have I call it shiny object syndrome, where you're into some new thing, and you're like, hey, let's do it. It's a cool idea. And then you get into it and you quickly realize 2 months in, 3 months in that it's a lot more work than you initially thought. And it's not sexy and exciting anymore. And you're like, you know what? Something else pops up. You're like, hey, let me go try this one. I see it a lot on the real estate side where people will get into wholesaling and they're like, hey, I want to start a wholesaling business. And then they're like, hey, I want to get into apartment investing, and they want to get into apartments. And then they're like, oh, like I want to get into self-storage. And then, well, what about like fix and flip? And so they just never actually commit to one thing, and they just bounce around from thing to thing every 3 months. One of my buddies, Tyler Devereaux, he's got a big he's a multifamily investor, but he's got a big education platform, and they have hundreds of thousands of multifamily students that they bring through the program. And he says only 17% actually buy an apartment deal in the first 12 months. And he said it's mostly because people get into it and it's exciting, and then 3 months later they realize it's not easy. It's going to take a lot more work than they thought, and then they move on to the next thing. So is that also a function of these people dropping out?
You're spot on. That's exactly the case. And that's actually why, again, this program by design, I told you week 1, we talk about vision and mission. You have to know why you're building what you're building, because again, there are the days where it gets really hard, whether it's in the startup and tech world or it's in real estate. The days where it gets hard and you wake up and you're like, it's going to be a tough one today, there has to be a reason why you're doing what you do. And this is why we want the founders to really care about the problem they're solving. These are things we look for, right? That's where we said leadership, resilience, and purpose. There has to be a purpose in why they're building what they're building, because again, this is not 3 months. This is not a year. This is not a few years. You are signing up to do this. I tell all founders this: when you are building a company, specifically one where you're going out and you're going to get investors like us, angel investors, venture capital, and you're looking for that big exit, the $1 billion plus outcome, that is a 10-year journey. And so, like, are you willing to put in 10 years? It has to be something you care about.
Yeah.
Otherwise, like, that's going to be a miserable 10 years. Or people just realize, oh, next thing. And so if we see those qualities as someone always bouncing to the next thing and not really sticking with something, and that's, I'd rather have them do it early. That's important before they spend a bunch of time and
honestly,
money.
When you're helping out, you're mentoring, younger folks, you're gonna put a lot more effort in if you're working with someone that is committed versus someone that's a little bit back and forth.
And
you know what I mean?
We call it like a business boot camp, because just like my boot camp in the Marines, you kind of realize who's walking and who's talking. A lot of people who talk a big game, they're the first ones to crack. Same thing in this. You go through a 3-month program, and if they graduate, if they make it through the 3 months where they're doing 30 hours of company building work every week and they're boom, 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 hitting all their deliverables, at least they validated that, all right, there's something there and they're the founder to do it. Do you know what I mean? So like, they've come out on the other side, and that's someone now that I'm willing to put more time and energy into because they've proven to me that they care about this and that they're willing to put in the work.
What do you think it is that drives, especially a younger entrepreneur, because you don't really know until you get in there and you actually go through a lot of the ups and downs and a lot of the sleepless nights, and you feel the pressure and you feel all that weight on your back when things get heavy, and things always get heavy at every level. Things get overwhelming at every level, but then you push through, you figure it out, and then boom, a new door opens up. And then you're like, wow, this is great. And then it's like a high, and then boom, you get smacked again. And it's like same thing. And every level it happens, right? So you don't really know until someone gets in and gets through years and years of this if they're like really cut out for it. But like, I'm curious for you, how do you, is there one thing that you can like pinpoint on someone that's like a new entrepreneur, their first few months, and be like, this is the one skill that's going to determine if you're committed to this game and if the game is truly for you or not?
I mean, I guess to your point, like, again, trying to combine this like leadership, resilience, and purpose, it's probably like adaptability. Like in the Marines, we had this tagline that was adapt and overcome. Like the only certain thing is uncertainty. Imagine how many of these companies 2 years ago, before November 22, when, OpenAI publicly releases ChatGPT for everyone to use, like how many industries were completely disrupted, and how much these tech companies now have to be AI enabled in some way, right? You have to have AI in your company in some way from 99% of the time. Like a lot of people didn't see that coming. And here's this entirely new variable. The landscape has completely shifted, and we're experiencing it this year too. You have a new administration coming in. Again, not a political statement, but things are changing, right? And Doge is coming in and whatever, cleaning up everything.
Which I love seeing that, by the way.
Yeah, the same. Like we could go down a rabbit hole there. Who doesn't want a more efficient government? Let's be honest. Tactics and how they're doing it, who knows? People could argue that, but at the end of the day, we want efficiency. But like things will change, and they always change, but you have to be willing to adapt. In fact, there's a course I teach, or I guess lecture at Stanford every summer for the summer class, and it's called Constrained Creativity. And I don't want to like ruin the whole thing because there'll be some students that go through that, and it's like one of the best courses on campus. And I have them do like a really hard thing with like a Rubik's Cube in a wall sit with all these variables, and I throw in all these variables that they didn't expect. And what I'm teaching them, these are again Stanford students that like they're probably going to go build great things in their lives, but now they're being introduced to adversity. And I want people to strengthen, and I want founders and entrepreneurs to be able to strengthen that adversity muscle and be able to overcome when these new variables and challenges come in. That's what we look for.
Because when the adversity hits, I mean, it gets heavy. And so I'm like, because I'm trying to think for myself, like for what drives me is I saw what it was like. And I grew up like most people, I was taught from a young age to go to school, get good grades, go to college, get a job. And for the most part, I did those things. And I worked an 11-year career as a air traffic controller, and I saw what it was like on that side. I knew nothing about business or real estate until my young to mid 30s, and so I don't know, man. I just like once I discovered business or real estate, I just like I don't know, this like light bulb moment turned on. I was like, dude, I've always been born to be an entrepreneur. I didn't know it until I discovered it in my mid 30s, And so now I'm just obsessed with the game, dude. I'm just like, I love this shit.
That's the
and
thing.
like,
And I'm watching your eyes light up. And like, that's when we were talking earlier before the pod, like that's how I feel about venture. Like when I think about venture capital, it's like, I was listening to it on the drive here. I'll listen to it on the drive back. I'm reading books about it. I'm talking about it. Like I can't explain why, but I love venture capital. I love this idea of being involved at the early stage with these like incredibly optimistic, inspirational, like driven founders that are building, I call it modern day alchemy. And like what I mean by that is they are very literally taking something that doesn't exist. It's an idea in their mind. That's what an entrepreneur is. It's an idea in their mind, and they're creating something very real that hopefully impacts a lot of people. That from idea doesn't exist to, hey, this is a very real thing. And I think like the fact that we get to be part of that as entrepreneurs or investors, and we get to play a role, like how cool is that? We're creating things in the world that didn't exist or supporting that function in some way. I think that's super interesting. So why not do the thing that makes your eyes light up, right? You found real estate, oh, this is my jam. Like I look for founders that when they're telling me about the thing they're building, their eyes light up. I'm like, yep, that's the one.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. But yeah, I think it's like you just said, it's founders that are addicted to the game, and then they want it so bad and are just so addicted to the growth and just getting 1% better every single day. And it's even like, you know, when you have those tough days where everything's freaking heavy and you're just putting out fires left and right, it's like you got to actually be addicted to that too, because like that's kind of I think that's a rare thing. But I'm actually like I'm addicted to even that stuff. It's weird,
man.
dude.
Well, I'll give you a perfect example. There's a local guy in town you should also have on the pod, Dan Magee.
Okay.
He sold a company for 9 figures. He's here in San Diego. He doesn't ever have to work again. And he was retired. He'll correct me if I'm wrong here. Like, I think 3 weeks until he said, I got to start my new thing. And he saw what was happening in Russia, Ukraine, and ends up creating this company, Firestorm. That's one of our portfolio companies that we ended up investing in 2 rounds. And Firestorm just recently, Lisa probably talked about them on the pod. They just recently got a $100 million Air Force contract. We invested again very, very early. So they're on this like hyper growth trajectory right now. And they're doing unmanned aerial systems. Think 3D printed drones with interchangeable parts, with ISR, kinetic, however you want to do it. But like that to me is this example. When I looked at Dan's eyes and he was telling me, like, he's like, I don't ever have to work again, but this thing matters so much to me. I have to go out and build it. And of course, we're going to give money to someone like that. He's going to go out and crush. And here he is, 2 years later, just on this, like, he's going to, crushing it. Does that make sense? So
it
like,
does, yeah.
That's what we look for.
I love that, man. It's like Conor McGregor. If you guys watch UFC, listen to this. When he got his big payday with Floyd Mayweather, and he came back to fight Khabib or Magomedov. It's like he already had that big payday. He's coming back, and he had the whiskey company as well. So it's like he's coming back because he actually really likes the game of fighting, and that's the difference that you just alluded to there in that example.
I want to really quick because it's like so top of mind for me. I remember thinking, when we went out to raise the fund, we also started fundraising in historically the most challenging fundraising environment there was. This is 2022. Obviously, we had this like frothy ZERP 2021 period, and I can't tell you how many people told us, "There's no way you guys are going to raise a fund. There's no way. You guys are first-time fund managers, hardest fundraising environment.
Bad news in the marketplace. Interest rates are doubling."
Everything, like everything was locking up. There was like IPO window was closed, meaning like no M&A activity completely slowed down. So there was like
gearing up for a big recession in 2020.
Yeah, like there wasn't like capital flowing, and yet what I remember actually talking to Ryan, Justin, Lisa about this, I said, even if we go out and fail, like even the fact that we went out and tried, like will have been a good use of our time. The fact that like I knew we weren't going to fail, by the way. But I was like, even if we dedicate 2-3 years of our lives to this, to trying to build it, and for whatever reason it doesn't work, like I know that would have been time well spent. I think also like that's the kind of conviction you want to look for in founder, like almost like you would do it for free. In fact, so many of our founders like feel that way, where like they're doing it regardless of whether it's going to succeed or not because they have to do it.
Yeah, and that's why I think like. I see a lot of people that are trying to get out of a full-time W-2 career, and they want to go into real estate investing full-time. And a lot of people will dabble with both for a long time. And for me, I dabbled with both just for a little bit. But once I saw enough of like this new life as a real estate investor, and once I thought I had enough to like punch out and just go all in, I made the jump. I burned the boats. I left my air traffic control career and I went all in. And that's really where the growth started really like happening. But I think a lot of these people that kind of dabble one foot in, one foot out, they don't see a ton of growth in the real estate investing side because they're not committed to the game, which goes to exactly what you're talking about right there.
Yeah, look, we have a number of requirements for us to make an investment as a firm. One of them, a no-brainer, is it has to be a full-time team. We do not invest in founders that are part-time. Well, I understand the challenges that come with that. They say, well, I need to have traction in order to attract investors. I need investors and capital to be able to get more traction, So that's why I feel like this is such a unique time for founders because they can build with all these low code, no code solutions. They can do it relatively inexpensively. You can get some early product velocity, like you can get things off the ground. But yeah, we do not invest in founders if they're not all in with what they're building. You can't be dabbling in and out.
What else are you guys looking for when you guys qualify these businesses that you want to participate with? Like what is the ideal search criteria for you guys?
Our sweet spot is, think of it like a bullseye. Outer circle, there has to be a military veteran on the leadership team. Again, this is like, I talked about every single investor, regardless, angel investors, VCs, in one form or another, looks at team, product, and market, right? Team, product, market. For us, the bullseye is there's a veteran on the leadership team that addresses the team part of it. Again, doesn't guarantee success, but it de-risks it and says, hey, this is someone that's
on the leadership team somewhere.
Perfect. Second, critical technology. And critical technology is, I talked about investments that matter. The U.S., actually, the Office of Strategic Capital and the Pentagon came together and they came up with these 14 critical technology areas with a 15th. That's like the partnership of them. Without going into detail about what all of them are, I like to say like investments that matter for our country, things we care about. Right now, I'll give you an example. In 1 week, today's the 18th, in 1 week, I will be in Florida at Cape Canaveral and watching my first ever rocket launch in person. One of our portfolio companies, Lone Star Lunar, is putting data centers on the moon. They actually did their first mission last year in February and landed on the South Pole of the moon. This was like, and I can't believe more people weren't excited about this. It was the first time since 1972 we've gone back. It's been 50 years. The U.S. has gone back. First time a private company's ever done this. So people don't know this. We landed back on the moon. We're doing another mission to the moon a week from today, and that's one of our portfolio companies that's on that lunar lander, and I'm going to go watch a rocket launch. Like, that to me is an example of this is like advancing our country. Does that make sense? So we do space, we do cybersecurity, we obviously have defense companies, we have fintech, future of work. So we look at like companies that matter, that I'm really, like all of them, I want to be proud to talk about. So that's number two. And then the last part is the stage at which we invest. I mentioned of the different stages, you have like the early stage, and in fundraising, you typically, will it be helpful real quick if 30 seconds I talk about the fundraising? The caveat here is these are founders that are building venture backable companies. When I say venture backable, we're looking for hypergrowth. I'm overgeneralizing, but we're looking for roughly $100 million in revenue in 5 years. We're looking for, liquidity events, IPOs, M&A, in like a 5 to 7 year window. And so folks that are on that kind of hypergrowth, that are looking not for linear growth, but exponential growth, the path you normally go on is you start your company and you do what's called bootstrapping. You're just doing it. You've never taken in outside capital. You're only funding it with your own capital. Then you raise what's called an FFF. We call it friends, family, and fools. Like fools are people only crazy enough to believe in you. And then you go out and you raise, from angel investors. And angel investors are folks that write out of their own checkbooks. You may get whatever, 10, 15, 25K, sometimes up to 100, 150 from individual angel investors. And then you've crossed the chasm and you go into VC, venture capital. And that's when you have more firms like ours, the veteran fund, that are writing the larger size checks. So we write 500K up to like 1.5 million into these companies. Then you go pre-seed, seed, Series A, Series B, Series C, all the way down until you have some kind of liquidity event.
Question for you. So like, and maybe this is different than commercial real estate, but there's a lot of retail investors in the commercial real estate space to where it's common for them to write a $500,000 check, $600,000 check, and invest into these different real estate offerings as a retail investor. Is that a lot less common? You mentioned angel investors are typically writing 25, 50, maybe 100, but is it typically because it's higher upside, but also higher risk. So higher risk, higher rewards. So they're not as exposed as like a commercial real estate retail investor might be, because it's more of a capital preservation play.
That's exactly right. And so as you kind of move up the capital stack, like again, we play in venture capital, and then you go into what's called like growth equity. And that's when you're actually moving into private equity. VC is actually a subset of private equity, because these are all private companies. But as you get into the like later stage rounds, it's obviously de-risked, right? But also the return multiples are much lower. So with private equity, like pretty consistently turnkey, they're able to do like 1.5 on your money, like 1.5 MOIC, multiple on invested capital. They just do it like kind of over and over, 1.5, like, because they come in so late, the risk is a little bit lower and they kind of in aggregate across their portfolio. For us, every single investment we make at the Veteran Fund, we're targeting 100x. We come in at like a $10 or $20 million valuation. We will not make an investment if we don't think this company can reach $1 billion or $2 billion. So it's just a very different profile, obviously much riskier, but much larger potential upside. But without getting into like the details of fund mechanics and everything, the way the power law works in venture is if 1 or 2 companies in our entire portfolio is the breakout, it returns the entire fund. That's how VC works. We want them all to succeed.
Yeah, and if you guys have 3 or 4 breakthrough, then it's going to be exponential return and big win for all the investors. So I guess the idea is, and this is newer to me, right? I'm raising cap. We have a fund in the real estate space, so I talk with a lot of commercial real estate limited partners, right? But in this space, is the goal for a lot of these retail investors to diversify in as many startups as possible that they feel good about, and then, like you said, if 1 or 2 hits, they're good.
Yeah, there's so many reasons to become a limited partner in a venture capital fund, but like the biggest one is they would otherwise not have access to this asset class. First of all, it's very hard to get into the kinds of like the deals that we're doing are not publicly available anywhere, right? Like to do this company Lone Star that's putting data centers on the moon. Where would the average person even find an opportunity to do that? And if they found it, how would they even diligence it? How would they know if there's a there? That's why we have a 2% management fee, and that's standard in venture, 2% management fee, 20% carry. But because we're doing all the heavy lifting. Again, we looked at 5,000 companies and said, this basket of 20 plus the 5 more we'll do. So this basket of 25 companies, we believe are the strongest companies that are going to win. And so now the LP is diversified. Instead of taking one bet on a company that they're like, I have no idea if it's going to succeed or not, we're doing the heavy lifting for them. And now they have exposure to 25 companies, and specifically in an asset class that has the 100x potential. Like, where else would you get an opportunity to do that? So I think it's an important part. And this is why, like, when we talk to the ASU or UT endowment fund, or the pension funds and family offices that I mentioned, we have, a number of family offices, including the Kraft family, the owner of the New England Patriots. Why did they invest in funds like ours? They want exposure to the venture capital asset class, and it's a part of their portfolio. Do they have a bunch of other, asset classes? Of course they do. Venture is the higher risk, but higher reward part of their portfolio.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, man. And, for the limited partners out there or like passive investors, it's like you just said, it's for most of our limited partners, at least, like the highest and best use of their time is not going and betting real estate deals and being in the weeds of the operations. And they want some passive income. They want some tax benefits. They want some of the upside. But a lot of them know that their highest and best use is in their given business, in their given field. Maybe they're high income earning W-2, they're a doctor, attorney, etc. And that's the best use of their time. They have family, they have kids. They only have so much time. So it's like, hey, invest with people like you that are going out and literally qualifying thousands of deals before you say yes to one. And by the way, you're diversified across 20 different companies. And if 1 or 2 of them hit, you're good. So it makes a lot of sense. And I think that's one of the things that a lot of people that, maybe are starting out in investing, they don't understand is they think when they jump in as a limited partner, they got to understand every dynamic of the deal. And it's like, no. The reason you're investing passively is so you don't have to spend any time doing that. That's
right. And for me, like, look, we were talking about real estate before this. Like, I'm not an expert in real estate, and I actually don't have a lot of interest in becoming an expert. I love venture capital. I love early stage startups. So I would just give someone like you and your fund money, knowing that you're the expert. this is what you think and dream about and talk about and read about, and you're out there finding all the great deals. Why would I not give it to someone I trust that has built domain expertise in that industry? Same with us. Like I mentioned the background of our partners, like we know this world inside and out. I know exactly what to look for in companies and founders and product velocity. You could try to learn it yourself, like the average LP could, but it becomes a full-time job. So then if they have that interest, then they should start an SPV or their own fund. And that's cool too. Folks are generally, it may be different in real estate. Folks are so interested in venture capital. They're like, wait, how does this work? And what do you look for in companies? And I could talk about that stuff all day long. So I understand the questions that they're coming from, but yeah, I'd say if they have a lot of like interest in doing it themselves, I'm like, for sure, go start your own, and you can start with SPVs, doing deal by deal and start angel investing. Like I'm part of angel groups here in San Diego, New Fund, if you're familiar with them, and San Diego Angel Conference. So these are for accredited investors. And what's great is they kind of like teach you how, for folks that are brand new, to teach you how to be an angel investor. They start with 100 companies, they teach you the diligence process, and they ultimately pick 1 or 2 companies that they write a check into. So lots of great resources out there for people to learn how to invest in startups. Because to me, it's such an exciting asset class.
Yeah, I love that. One thing you mentioned before we started recording, you've been to 59 countries, dude. That is a heck of a lot of countries. But it's funny because I've been about 22, and there's this app, I forget the name of the app, but you put in the countries and places you've visited. And based on 22 countries, I think it's like less than 10% of the entire world. But out of all 59 countries, I'm curious, what was the number one for you in terms of like your favorite country that you would go back to?
I get asked that question a lot. I will say I've been to so many beautiful places and so many more to go. I can't wait to see even more of the world. I've slowed down international travel the last few years because focus on the fund. The place I go back to, obviously Indonesia is the country, but Bali's the island. Indonesia as a country is very different than the island. But in terms of places I've gone back to the most, I've been to Bali maybe 20 times versus 20 other places.
Damn.
Yeah. Versus
you should buy some real estate there, man.
It's a little tricky. I have friends buying properties out there. Like my sister lives in Italy. I love going to Italy. There are so many beautiful countries in the world, but like there's something about Bali, I can't describe it other than when I land there and I take off my shoes and I'm just barefoot riding a scooter around the island. There's something magical. Have you been to Bali?
I've never been. It's one of the things on the list. I got to go check it out.
Yeah. It's a special place, man.
Yeah. Mike, I appreciate you coming on the show, man. Definitely long overdue conversation that we just had. I'm a big fan of everything you're doing. Where can the folks get in touch with you if they want to learn more about the Founder Institute, the Veteran Fund, all the above?
Yeah. Veteran Fund was super easy, veteran.fund, or Google it. You'll see us and kind of all of our portfolio companies. And, we put out a bunch of content too. So that's exciting. Founder Institute, if they just go to fi.co/veteran. And for veterans, we have this partnership with JP Morgan, where we give a fellowship. Every single veteran gets to go through that program for free. Yeah, JP Morgan's been an incredible supporter of what we're building. So fi.co/veteran, veteran.fund, and then, I'm Mike Sherbakov on all the socials.
There it is. He's Mike Sherbakov. I'm Rich Summer's listeners. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.